Thanks for joining in. I'm Tanya Granic Allen. Joining me today is Aaron Wudrick, who is National Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Aaron, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, in the last few episodes, I've sort of really touched on the economic hardship that we as taxpayers are facing in this country. I didn't think at the tail end of, say, last week's episode that I would be doing an episode this week to focus on what I would suggest is a cash grab from federal political parties. Do people need their heads checked? What happened exactly?
Yeah, it seems pretty tone deaf. What happened was the major political parties, so the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the Democrats, and the Green Party. Ironically, the only party which did not apply was the Bloc Québécois. They applied for the wage subsidy, which is being offered to companies and other nonprofits. And so a lot of people kind of raised an eyebrow and thought, really, is this what this is meant for? Because a lot of people may not know political parties are already heavily subsidized by taxpayers. They offer far more generous tax credits than charities. Part of their election spending is rebated by taxpayers. So they already get millions and millions of dollars from taxpayers. So for them to come back one more time for more money seems a little bit much.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder if their communication staff was really paying attention here, because you're right, it does come across as exceptionally tone deaf. I donate to political parties. I enjoy that up to 75% tax credit, but I do that on my own choosing. But to go and to put their hands into the pockets of taxpayers saying, you know what, we want that subsidy for wages. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate they have employees just like the other businesses do. I appreciate that. But they're a federal political party. There's got to be a line in the sand somewhere.
Well, they already enjoy, as I said, far more benefit than anyone else. So if they can't make a go of it under those circumstances, that raises some questions. I was happy to give credit to the Bloc Québécois, which I don't often get an opportunity to do. They're taking a principled stand here. And we saw that at least two of the Conservative leadership candidates so far, Aaron O'Toole and Peter MacKay, have said that if they become leader, they'll pay that back. So I think that's welcome. And we'd like to see what the other candidates have to say there. But look, these are parties that have essentially set up rules that benefit themselves for years. And it's safe to say that when this subsidy was put in place to help businesses and nonprofits, no one was thinking about political parties as being the beneficiary. So I think it is, them trying to take advantage of a situation that for example, they would never dare pass a bill specifically to give themselves a subsidy. They're kind of trying to sneak in the back door here on a much broader program.
So what would be the solution here? Should they just lay off their employees or furlough them and say, look, there's the CERB, the CERB, the employee emergency benefit available to them because the optics are bad? Or should all employees be able to access, or all small businesses access this? And should, communications and tone deafness not actually factor in?
Well, that's a decision for the political parties to make. I think that people who say, well, we need the money to pay our employees, well, so do many other businesses and nonprofits that have had to lay off staff or cut salaries. Full disclosure, at the Taxpayers Federation, we're a nonprofit. We don't issue any tax receipt. We are not applying for any benefit. We have all taken salary cuts at the CTF on principle. I think especially for parties that are going to be critical of other subsidies to other industries, it puts you in an awkward spot. I mean, the Conservatives, for example, have been very critical of the media bailout, taxpayer money going to media. It's very difficult to be critical of that when your own organization is taking subsidies on the other hand. So I think they really need to have a serious think about whether it's the right thing to do.
And I suppose it would also introduce bias when if we ever have a proper parliament sitting again and they're debating whether to extend these kinds of small business subsidies or business subsidies when they're actually benefiting from it as a party. Sir, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing that this reminded me of is a program that ended in 2015 that was introduced under the Liberals in 2004, which was the Pervote subsidy. That was something else I thought that was somewhat ridiculous, that taxpayers were not only on the hook, if you will, for those generous tax credits of lost revenue, if you will, up to 75% for political donations. On top of that, other funds given to political parties during election time. Beyond that, there was actually a per vote subsidy that ended before the 2015 election, thankfully. But I thought that was equally absurd. Why would we ever pay per vote subsidy? And I know there were some rumblings to bring that back recently. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it would be a bad idea to do that. Look, there's been many different reforms with political party financing in this country. People remember that the Liberals in the early 2000s brought in rules that banned big business and union donations, so they all have to be small donations. The trade-off was the per vote subsidy. We think the limits are fine, but having that subsidy, it really doesn't give political parties an incentive to go out and hustle for their money, just like any other business or, again, a nonprofit like ourselves. Political parties are important. They serve an important role in our system, but they should have to hustle for their money just like any other organization. And they have constantly set up a system that advantages them to the disadvantage of other worthy nonprofits and charities. A lot of people, when they're thinking of a nonprofit, they're thinking of a homeless shelter or a food bank or charities that help children in low-income countries. They're not thinking of, the political party that is going to run attack ads against their opponents to the tune of millions of dollars. So I just think political parties need to think carefully about whether this is going to be well received, that this really wasn't the intent of the program when it was set up.
So you mentioned there were a couple leadership contestants from the Conservatives who said that they would pay this back. Has there been any communication from the federal party saying that actually we've changed our mind, we won't apply for this, except for the Bloc Québécois, who I think did the right thing and applied from it from the get-go?
No, we have not heard. And again, these are candidates to become leaders, so they technically don't have any say right now, although it is going to be very interesting to see. We will certainly be holding either of those two, and if one of those two becomes the winner, they have staked out their ground. They're going to do that, and we're certainly going to hold them to account on it.
Excellent. And I know you have your ear to the ground also with the taxpayer, because that's your stakeholder group, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Have you heard from anybody who said, hey, that's okay, that was a good idea, they should have applied? Any positives out of this?
No, I mean, look, a lot of people have pointed out that they've been, getting big subsidies from taxpayers in a number of ways for years, as you pointed out. But I think this may be the straw that breaks the camel's back and makes people realize that they really are treated very specially relative to everybody else.
Well, I guess we're going to have to see in the coming days if people haven't had a good head shake, and perhaps we'll treat the taxpayer with a bit more respect going forward. It's politics. It's always very delicate. So you really have to watch out from being tone deaf, don't we?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, listen, Aaron, thank you so much for joining me. Once again, that was Aaron Wudrick, National Director with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.